Hello and welcome to the second episode of the Roost podcast. I'm your host, Bryce.
And I'm the co-host, Luke.
This is part 2 to our Root lore video. Today we'll covering the Corvid Conspiracy, Lord of Hundreds, Keepers in Iron, Twilight Council, Lilypad Diaspora, and the Knaves of the Deepwood. Starting off is Corvid Conspiracy. The Corvid Conspiracy in-game, they play a lot like just popping up around the map, placing plots around. But how do they act in the lore?
I mean, there's actually a pretty decent amount of lore on the Corvids. There's a solid 4 pages in the Root RPG guide. Travelers Outsiders. They originally were immigrants. They immigrated into the woodland, and then the Eerie Dynasty suppressed them and exploited them, and so they all wanted to group together for protection.
Yeah, and the interesting thing is, yes, they mainly don't like the Eerie Dynasty, but they also don't like the cats. Where they originally was the homeland of the Pt2 cat. So then they immigrated into the woodland, which was Eerie ruled before the cats came in and ruled it. And now they kind of don't like both of the two militant powers. And I suppose if there was a reign by the duchy, they wouldn't like them either.
Yeah, I think they're just quite anti-government. And they also kind of split in half when the Eerie Civil War happened and the Eerie Fracture. The more ideological among them were like, okay, good job, mission complete. But the old guard, they really liked the power that they had with their criminal network and wanted to keep building and keep doing what they were doing just because they had more power that way.
Yeah, and these old guards are what we see now in the board game room. And kind of, since the Woodlands kept the Corvids active, they created networks throughout, just in every single kind of government. And it's not just Corvids in the Corvid Conspiracy, it's all kinds of woodland creatures.
Yeah, they had to expand their recruiting because the missions they wanted to go on needed more people than just the original Corvids.
Yeah, because they had a really small amount of people, so they had to stick to smuggling, manufacturing drugs, thievery, extortion, and arson. And due to these low numbers, they couldn't have too much of a presence, but they could have presence through the plots that they were able to conduct.
Yeah, that also reflects really nicely in the board game. They're popping up just in random places, but never in very much number. But the plots are a real threat that you have to worry about.
Yeah, that's the origins of the Corvids. How do you think the Corvids kind of are in the Woodland War right now?
They're definitely trying to. They're just very anti-government. They're trying to take down any government, but they're happy to work with governments as long as the governments are willing to work with them. So, extorting money from political opponents, some blackmail threats, and if you don't take their money and do what they want, then you might find a bomb inside your house.
Yeah.
They're not scared to kill rivals.
Yeah, and the Corvid Conspiracy, what they ultimately want is complete control over the woodland. They don't want anyone else to have power over the woodland. Instead, they prefer a network that they have complete control over. They might not have the amount of people or the military force, but they do have the plots and the networks over some stuff like the Eerie Dynasty and Pt2 cat.
Yeah, they don't want one powerful government. They want lots of smaller governments that all are part of the criminal network that leads back to them.
Yeah, and what's kind of interesting is there's a lot of plots that don't make it into the game. Like Corvid Conspiracy has a plan for every political situation. In some clearings, they might try to overthrow a ruler, or they might try to have already positioned members as a high-level official that are already in the Corvid Conspiracy, but they might have to defend that position against other political opponents. So it's kind of a difference between the board game. It's a lot more combative approaches, or extortion, raids, bombs, and snares. But Corvids don't just have those kind of plots. They kind of have all plots for all scenarios.
I mean, I think that makes sense because in a gameplay perspective, how are you supposed to overthrow a regional leader when in the board game there are no regional leaders? There's just one dictator of the faction.
And while it might not show up on paper, in the game, Corvids will rarely rule that many clearings. Corvids might have more control over that clearing, but it might not show up as like rule. And that kind of reflects how in the lore, the Corvids are kind of under everything. They have strings in every single form of government and every single clearing, but they might not show on the map to the higher leaders of other factions.
I mean, yeah, they don't have enough people to, at least in the board game, count as ruling that clearing, which is definitely like what you're saying.
Yeah. And each clearing has like a head conspirer that all like make up the Council of Crows. So there's most likely, it doesn't say specifically, but there's most likely 12 council members. Each member kind of is the leadership position of each clearing because there's 12 clearings in Root. And depending on how much influence the Corvid conspiracy has, each council member might have a different role in that clearing. Some council members could be the leader of the clearing, and these would be clearings that the Corvid conspiracy rules. Other council members might be kind of in the underground, more focused on influencing the people. And some might be complete like war council members that are trying to take over the clearing or initiate plots to like bomb the clearing or anything else similar.
That makes sense. Bryce, do you have anything else to add for the
I was
conspiracy?
Go in more depth about the Council of Crows. For example...
Oh, yeah, sure.
Yeah. The Council of Crows meets regularly to determine which Corvid conspiracy's plots happen in each clearing. And ultimately, each council member does have the final say in what happens in the clearing. And this sometimes leads to bickering throughout the council members, as some might have more sway than others. And this determines through, for example, like where the council members are positioned or which each council member has sway over which plots are used. And this isn't just like a political maneuver. The Corvid conspiracy does have sway inside of them, inside of their own organization, and they kind of have to compete with each other.
Yeah, I feel like there would be a lot of internal politics inside the Corvids.
A lot of other factions, they don't have too much internal politics. I guess Duchy does, but most every other faction is kind of ruled over by one organization. Yes, Erie Dynasty does have 4 leaders, but one of them is always in control. The Corvid conspiracy really have to work their way through their own disputes to work as a coherent faction.
I mean, it's basically just 12 gang leaders getting together and saying how they want to rule a city or a country.
Yeah, it's kind of like the council from John Wick.
The table?
Yeah, the table. All right. Do you have anything else you want to touch on the Corvid conspiracy?
No, I think we've discussed everything that I want to talk about.
All right. So why don't we head into the Lord of the Hundreds? The Lord of the Hundreds, they have one single leader, and that's the Warlord. And
Arjun.
And they have to kind of the Hundreds warriors. They kind of have to deal with the Warlord's mood swings, which are unlike any other faction. Most factions, they have an actual leader who knows what they're doing, but the Lord of the Hundreds, they kind of just do whatever the Warlord feels like.
I feel like this guy has like something's wrong with his head.
Yeah.
Like he mood swings every time, every single day. He's just in a different mood.
Yeah, and some people don't understand, like, some woodland creatures might not understand why people listen to the Warlord, but what people discount him for is he's very, very charismatic. And he rules over all of his warriors, and he inspires them to take control of the woodland and to speed up his conquest. And his people love him. They really like believe into his message that they have to destroy all dissenters.
I mean, yeah, it makes sense. I mean, I'm assuming the Warlord made this game, but it says in their lore that they have a game where they each of them at the end of the day, they each sit around like a fire or something, and they each count points for how many people they oppressed. It's a bit sick, but it's all in the interest of the Warlord, and I assume he made this game to keep them in line.
Yeah, and the rats, they love him. He's a really charismatic leader, and every single one of his warlords, every single one of his fighters, his rats would gladly die for him without even like thinking about it. And even when the Warlord does like die, he just comes back because he's just that guy.
Yeah, in the tabletop game, we nicknamed him Jesus because he just comes back whenever you kill him.
Back. Yeah, what's more impressive? The vagabonds who literally just can't die, or the warlord who dies but comes back to life.
No. It's like the movie Magic. He's just unconscious, guys. He just got knocked out. We swear.
And the warlord, he's really, really obsessed with hoarding. Anything that the hundreds gets, they just bring to the warlord. I expect it's like a line where they're all, like at the end of the day, they're all lined up with everything they have, and they're just hoping that the warlord likes what they bring to him, and that he'll put it in his hoard.
I like to consider it like the Red Death in the original How to Train Your Dragon.
Yeah.
All the dragons have to bring food back, otherwise they get chomped. I feel like it's like that.
All right. Do you have anything else about the Lord of the Hundreds? There's not a lot of lore about them.
I mean, yeah, there's not too much. I think the only other thing is the rest of the Lord of Hundreds people. They also really like that their warlord is hoarding. They look upon his hoard and they love it. They want to do more to grow it as they see it grow. It's like a spiral effect.
Looks like we're going next to the Keepers in Iron. So the Keepers in Iron, they were a faction that kind of came from outside the woodland. Years ago they were exiled, and now they're back to reclaim what's theirs. Their relics. Yeah.
We like to think of this. We homebrew this as they used to be like the Erie Dynasty's sword and shield before the Erie Civil War, and then after the Erie Civil War, they got exiled without all their gear, and now they've come back for their gear.
The Keepers in Iron are probably the nicest of the factions. Like, some of the relics they're looking for aren't even theirs. They're kind of like the people's relics, and they're kind of just gaining influence with the people. Like, they're really just an order of knights who are sworn to their oath to kind of uphold the peace. That's what I think they are. I'll put up a photo of, there's a photo of a Keeper in Iron that's just giving a relic to I think it's a rabbit, and he's just like trying to be a nice guy.
I mean, I think the Keepers are the only ones actually giving anyone anything in the forest, even though like the revolution, the like rebelling factions, they don't give anything back to the people other than more violence, really.
So, a fun fact about the Keepers in Iron was originally, like in the early versions of development, they were called the Stone Seekers. And
so glad
they had the same role. They had the same role of trying to reclaim relics of like the ancient civilization of the woodland. The Stone Seekers, they had like, it wasn't their stuff. The Keepers in Iron, they were exiled a long, long time ago, and now they're back in the woodland to reclaim their stuff. The Stone Seekers are more like a archaeological organization that are trying to find lost relics of an ancient civilization not theirs in the woodland.
Yeah, like stone. You're seeking for something stone, like Stonehenge. The woodland equivalent of Stonehenge, I guess.
And what the Keepers in Iron do is they're able to craft like really fine armor. Like, all the factions technically have armor, or at least most of them have a sort of armor, but the Keepers in Iron are able to craft, like, really fine armor that help prevent them against attacks from other... And I assume that this armor is kind of hard to get, so that they only put the armor on when they have to defend their relics. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and that would be the cause for the tabletop buff when you're holding a relic. Because to me... That's actually really helpful, because to me, I'm like, why are they wearing their relic?
Yeah, I'm assuming that they only distribute their armor to those who have relics.
Yeah, that makes a lot more sense than the relic is their armor. Why are you putting the armor away? Just leave it on.
All right.
Anything else, or can we move on to the Twilight Council?
I think we'll have to move on to the Twilight Council. Now, quick disclaimer. Factions here on out have not been released. This is
at
part
the time
of the Homeland expansion, and these guys, they're like a new upcoming expansion to Root, and we have a little bit about it, but we don't have a lot. All right.
Yeah, so. And for any gameplay experience that we reference, we printed out the pre-release like test copies of them and played a couple games with them included. So that's where any gameplay experience would come from.
Yeah, we played the most games with the frogs, the Lilypad Diaspora. Twilight Council, I think we've only played one game, and
I think
like 1 or 2 games.
Yeah, I think I played 1 game as the Twilight Council.
That might have been the only game.
Yeah, I think I played 1 game as the Twilight Council. Yeah, I think I played 1 game as the Twilight Council. Yeah, I think I played 1 game as the Twilight Council. Yeah, I think I played 1 game as the Twilight Council.
That might have been the only game.
Oh, damn.
And
I
then
mean, it was not that fun to play.
yeah,
It's a pre-release
none of our
build.
guys really like Twilight Council. And Knaves of the Deepwood, we've played 2 games.
Yeah, and then instantly went Vagabond, but 3? No.
Yeah, it was a bit powerful. All right, Twilight Council. Do you want to start us
Yeah.
off on this one?
Twilight, they are a council of bats, but they do hold all members of the woodland. They are just represented as bats. They're essentially a UN style organization that just wants peace. They really try to end violence, and it's working a little bit. Their factions are moving away from battles and instead towards debates in the councils that the Twilight Council gives them. Yeah, they're a UN style organization.
What later games kind of equates them to is kind of like a bizarre Woodland Alliance. The Woodland Alliance wants to mobilize sympathizers through outrage and create battles, which creates backlash against the oppressors. But the council, on the other hand, wants to provide a framework for the woodland to kind of cool down the war rather than increase outrage towards those who would defy them. And the council isn't just represented by bats. It's kind of a movement as it includes the whole woodland, including all of its residents, not just bats.
Yeah, I don't know why they picked bats. Personally, I would have picked like owls, probably symbolize that like they're intelligent, like
Yeah, I think later games
like a
might maybe
parliament.
trying to not include as many bird factions. They already have 2.
Yeah, I know it does make sense that they didn't want another bird faction, but I still think that it would have made the most sense.
All right, Lilypad Diaspora.
Yeah,
Here we
not
go.
much lore on any of these guys.
Yeah, not much lore in any of these guys. So diasporas, like in real life, have created critical roles on societies and their politics. And later games have decided to put the Lilypad Diaspora as a diaspora in Root. And scattered a long time ago and suppressed ever since, they hope to kind of call the woodland their home. Kind of what I think. This is a me opinion, kind of a headcanon. I think that the diaspora might have been exiled just like the Keepers in Iron, and all the exiled factions are coming back. And this might have been also exiled by the Eerie, as it might have been like maybe the Eerie had to exile factions in their decree, otherwise they'd turmoil. You know what I mean?
Exile one faction per turn.
Yeah, I mean that'd suck, but
You run out of factions so quickly, you have to start exiling yourself.
yeah, I mean, which is kind of what happened.
Yeah, that's fair. Maybe they had to do that instead of turmoiling. In my personal headcanon, though, I think that they came from the same place that the Corvid conspiracy did. They came from the like where the cats
Oh yeah,
hold
Lamont the
complete
cat.
rule. Yeah,
Yeah, those guys.
I think they came from there, and they're kind of like seeking refuge.
Yeah, because where the cats were from, it used to have quite a few resources, but now it's kind of been fully industrialized and destroyed. So they've come to the woodland to create to get resources from there. All right. So what the Lilypad Diaspora want to do is they want to call the woodland their home and integrate into society very peacefully. But trying to integrate peacefully is very hard in the midst of a civil war. So they have to protect their people. They have to use aggression and fight for their freedoms.
Yeah, it's kind of unique that in some clearings if no one fights them, they won't fight back. So in clearings that just integrate them peacefully, they're perfectly happy to just stay peaceful. But then the clearings that like try and suppress them or kick them out or anything, they get angry very quickly, and then you have a lot of frogs at your doorstep.
Do you have anything else you want to talk about with the Lilypad Diaspora?
I think they kind of embody like high hopes, low expectations. They hope they can integrate peacefully, but they're very aware that they probably will have to fight to survive.
Yeah, they go into this knowing that they go into this with weapons at the ready, knowing that they might have to fight for their freedom.
They're very aware of the probably gonna have to fight.
Yeah, they just don't want to fight.
They'd rather not. Anyway, Knaves of the Deepwood.
Knaves of the Deepwood. Knaves of the Deepwood. When I first got into Root, finding out about the Vagabond and how there's multiple different types of Vagabonds, I thought the Vagabonds were kind of like an adventurers guild, and each game they'd send out like one adventure to kind of try and amass as much fame as possible. And I guess Knaves of the Deepwood is sort of an embodiment of that, except for Knaves of the Deepwood, unlike the Vagabond, aren't trying to get as much fame as possible. They're in for the money.
Just pure profiteers.
They're kind of like, I guess, like Robin Hood. This is what they do. So they target big armies, governments, and then they kidnap their people for ransom, and then make as much money as they can. They're kind of like a mystery faction. No one knows what they do with the money. Some say they spend it lavishly. Others, like, they give it back to the people, but no one really knows, you know?
I personally, if we consider one vagabond to be like a D&D character, I think Knaves of the Deepwood is just a D&D party
Yeah.
that happens to have an army in tow. So personally, I think they hoard the money, just
Yeah.
like all D&D parties do.
I'd say they hoard the money, especially because for vagabonds, yeah, they could do quests for people, but they don't. At least at our
Killing them's a
table,
lot more fun.
most of the vagabonds, at least at our table, because it's just better. They'll just kill people, not
Yeah,
do a
they'll
lot
maybe
of
have like
quests.
maybe one trading partner.
All right, is that it? There's literally
I-
less than a paragraph about the names of the Deepwood.
Yeah, yeah. There's about 6 lines, I think.
Yeah, it's not a lot.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you for listening to this last episode of Root Lore. Maybe if Names of the Deepwood or the Homeland expansion come out with any more, we might write a bit more. But thank you guys for listening. Bye.
Thank you. Goodbye.